1, 2, 3.
Hello everyone, I am Be Better Gamer. Welcome to Be Better Gamer Wrestling. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. This channel is dedicated to wrestling video games, fueled by my love, passion, and obsession for them. Today I am bringing you a Let's Play of WWF No Mercy, where I will be going through the first path of the championship mode with The Rock. This is the WWF Championship mode, the final championship mode that I have to do. Finally, BBG has come back to his Let's Plays. It's been a while. It really has. Thank you so much for being so patient with me. I actually did a WWF No Mercy Let's Play with The Rock for the Intercontinental Championship 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Damn, I don't know how I feel about that. That's a very long time, but I am finishing the WWF Championship mode this year, I promise. A lot has been happening in those 2 years. You can find me Monday through Thursday on twitch.tv/BeBetterGamer, while I've been streaming the Aki games as well as WWE 2K19, Fire Pro Wrestling World, and other various wrestling games. I hope you enjoy this Let's Play. Sorry for the delay. I hope you check out my Twitch channel and catch me live when I'm streaming wrestling games, but let's get right into it. So the path that we're going to be following is kind of long, and I have to win every match with The Rock. And I chose The Rock to start off my WWF Championship Let's Play series because the championship mode in this path follows pretty much The Rock's journey through WrestleMania 2000 and winning WWE Championship at Backlash afterwards. Even though they don't really call it Backlash, it's really interesting how they do it. Actually, no, they do call it Backlash. What am I talking about? But they do it. We'll see. You'll see when we get there. They do it sort of like how he had his match on Judgment Day. But we'll get to all that. I love to focus on the historical context when I do my Let's Plays, and it's great that the WWF Championship path in this game for once actually follows a lot of what was going on. I've talked about in the past how I'm actually not crazy about the various championship paths in No Mercy, but I do think, as we'll see in this episode and future episodes, the WWF Championship path is probably the most reminiscent of storylines that were happening in WWF at the time. There were a few paths in the Intercontinental Championship mode that followed some on-screen paths closely, most notably like with Chris Jericho, but I think the WWF path has more. Like I mentioned, I have to win every match, including the Royal Rumble, which is going to be next. I don't remember The Rock facing Taka to qualify for the Royal Rumble, but here we go, giving a rock bottom to Taka Michinoku. You have to fight Taka at the beginning of every WWF Championship path when you're fighting as a contender. You know what I've never done? I've never done a WWF Championship path with Taka Michinoku. I wonder who they substitute instead of Taka. It's probably S.A. Rios or something like that. There are a few different outcomes for the Royal Rumble match that we will see later on in future episodes, but for now, I only have to win, and that's going to happen in Chapter 2. Now, the Royal Rumble is long. I've talked about it in the past. You can hear me talk about it on Twitch. I don't like Royal Rumble matches in a lot of wrestling games. There's still not really a wrestling game that I've played that I've enjoyed the Royal Rumble match type. As much as I love No Mercy and the Aki games, it's no exception. I'm not crazy about the Royal Rumble mode here. It's very tedious. It can get kind of boring. So you're going to see coming up that I am going to skip the Royal Rumble. Now, it's fun that the WWF Championship path starts with the Royal Rumble, but really this journey starts at Survivor Series. Normally when I do the historical context for the championship paths, I start from Survivor Series 99 and I go to Survivor Series 2000 because, you know, WrestleMania 2000 was released in November of 99, and then No Mercy was released in November of 2000. So I like to use Survivor Series to Survivor Series sort of as like my outline of what to talk about based on the wrestler that I'm playing as. And you're gonna see here me playing in the Royal Rumble, but really we gotta look at Survivor Series 99 because that's where I think The Rock's journey began, because Survivor Series 99, it was the infamous beginning of the Who Ran Over Stone Cold Steve Austin storyline. Originally, the main event of Survivor Series 99 was supposed to be a triple threat between Austin, The Rock, and The Big Show. And storyline, Austin gets hit by a car that night, so he can't compete. Real reason, Austin needed surgery. So he was going to be gone for most of the year, which we will talk about later on. Big Show becomes the substitute for Stone Cold Steve Austin in that triple threat and ends up winning the match against Triple H, who was the champion, and The Rock. That leads us to Armageddon 99. The Rock and Sock Connection defeats the New Age Outlaws by disqualification in a tag team championship match. Here, you'll see I'll be speeding through the Royal Rumble. Fun thing to note about the Royal Rumble in WWF No Mercy, everyone coming in sort of follows how they entered in the actual Royal Rumble, and I'll talk a little bit more about the entrance in a bit. And I think that's kind of neat, that little attention to detail. Also, in the Royal Rumble, for some reason in the championship path, they have 30 wrestlers that can come in and enter, but when you try to do the Royal Rumble on your own in like a regular exhibition match, you can only do entrance at the multiple of 4. So you can only do either 28 people or 32 people. I always thought that was interesting, that they had the ability to do 30 entrants of the Royal Rumble in No Mercy only in the championship path, but didn't allow you to do it when you did a normal battle royal. I always thought that was so weird. I don't know why they did that. Obviously, there's some people in the Royal Rumble, the actual Royal Rumble, that didn't make it into the game. Most notably, Bob Backlund has a special guest appearance, and The Big Show, which we'll talk about in a second. You know, he just won the WWF Championship at Survivor Series. At Armageddon, The Rock, he teams up with Mankind. This is sort of like tying up the end of the Rock and Sock connection going on, so that's a reason why I want to highlight it, not just because it was a pay-per-view match, but, you know, the Rock and Sock, they would team again the next night against the Dudleys on Raw, and in January, I believe, on another episode of Raw, in an 8-man tag team match with the Acolytes against DX. But they would not be seen together in the ring together as a tag team until WrestleMania 2000, which would be 4 years later. I'm not 2000. At WrestleMania 20, which would be 4 years later against Evolution in a handicap match. The main takeaway from Armageddon was the birth of the McMahon-Helmsley era, where Triple H defeated Vince McMahon in a street fight after Stephanie betrayed Vince McMahon. Pronouns, pal. And that is a big takeaway, because again, it all starts in Survivor Series. Everything that's happening is going to lead into WrestleMania 2000, which is the focal point of this story mode, the focal point of this game in a lot of ways. Royal Rumble 2000, here I am eliminating X-Pac, who was the last person to enter the Royal Rumble, part of the Final Four. The actual Final Four in the Royal Rumble was X-Pac, Kane, Big Show, and The Rock. Now, most notably, the Big Show is not in WWF No Mercy. If you've played this game, you've heard of this game before, you know he was left out of the main roster. His face is actually still in the game and can be recovered with a Game Shark code. I've actually made a call of him on my channel. You can check it out without using the Game Shark. They have all his stuff in the game, his moves, his taunts, his attire. Everything is in there. He was removed because shortly after WrestleMania, he was sent back down to development as sort of a punishment, because apparently things backstage weren't going so well with the Big Show. So they removed him from TV, they removed his merchandise, and they removed him from WWF No Mercy. So we'll see Stevie Richards play the role of the Big Show in our WWF Championship Let's Play, and that's important because the ending of the actual Royal Rumble was The Rock winning after the Big Show tried to dump The Rock out, but The Rock would hold on to the ropes and cause Big Show to fall over, and then The Rock would win the Royal Rumble. It was probably, looking back on it and rewatching it for this channel, probably one of the most predictable Royal Rumbles ever done. Like, realistically, who else was winning it that year? Out of the only other possible choices of The Big Show and The Rock, maybe Kane? Not really, that wasn't going to happen. Most likely, Austin would have been featured if he hadn't been out for injury. And fun fact that I didn't really know until doing research for this video, The Rock has only been in 4 Royal Rumbles, 1997, 1998, 2000, and 2001. The winner of all 3 of those Royal Rumbles besides The Rock in 2000, Stone Cold Steve Austin. In 98 and 2001, The Rock was like the 28th person eliminated, also same number eliminated, and in 97 he was eliminated by Mankind. So imagine if Austin was around, maybe this Royal Rumble would have ended differently. Who knows? WrestleMania 2000 would have ended differently. I'll do a Stone Cold Steve Austin WWF Championship Let's Play for sure, where we can get into that. But right now, all you got to know is that The Rock won, but there'll be some shenanigans after that. Here you can see, Stevie Richards coming in as the role of The Rock, interfering in the match with Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle will play a big role coming up. So this sets up this. They do that thing where Big Show goes to Limited Rock. He holds onto the ropes. But this sets up a protest from the Big Show, where he goes to Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, the new McMahon-Helmsley era, saying he knows The Rock's feet touch the ground. This would last a few episodes until footage was actually shown that The Rock's feet did in fact touch the ground, and that sets up a match between The Rock against the Big Show at No Way Out. So technically the Big Show is the winner of the Royal Rumble in 2000, but the decision was actually never changed. And in a pretty rare moment of WWE acknowledging like decades-old continuity, on an episode of Raw on January 25th, 2016, 16 years and 2 days later, The Rock made a visit to Raw, and he runs into the Big Show backstage, saying that he agreed that Big Show was in fact the winner of that Rumble, and how different Show's life could have been. Big Show gets emotional, and he like cries a little bit, destroys a laptop in his hand. It's pretty funny stuff. I love that moment. I love payoffs 15 years later. 15 years in the making. That's why I watch pro wrestling. Another important takeaway from this Royal Rumble that I have to mention is the Triple H and Cactus Jack match, which is, to me, the highlight of the Royal Rumble and arguably one of the best matches to ever happen at a Royal Rumble. The street fight that they had was very important for both of their careers and leads up to the WrestleMania feud. I'll go more into detail about that match when I do Triple H and Mankind paths. Triple H won in brutal fashion, giving a pedigree to Cactus Jack onto thumbtacks. Here we go. Stevie Richards saying he's got video evidence. See, this is exactly what the Big Show did. He got video evidence, and now Triple H is like, all right, I'm going to give you guys a match. It's exactly what happened, and that match would happen at No Way Out 2000. Big Show against The Rock. #1 contendership to face at WrestleMania 2000 for the WWF Championship. And they would face whoever would win between Triple H and Cactus Jack, who were going to have a rematch that night in a Hell in a Cell. With that stipulation being, if Mick Foley lost, then he would retire. Or if he wins the championship, he goes on to WrestleMania. During the match between The Rock and the Big Show, Shane McMahon came down, seemingly to substitute for the referee not being able to make the pin, but instead The Rock got hit with a chair by Shane McMahon, giving the Big Show the chance to win the match. Triple H would go on to defeat Foley at the Hell in a Cell. So now your WrestleMania 2000 main event at the end of No Way Out is Triple H versus the Big Show. But we all know what happens next, and that's really the point of this story mode, right? The point of this story mode, the point of this game in a lot of ways, is WrestleMania 2000, the main event. A McMahon in every corner, Triple H, The Rock, Mick Foley, and the Big Show. But at the end of No Way Out, we don't really know that we're going to go in that direction. I mean, if you've been watching WWE long enough, even at this point, you can kind of tell that they were going to go in some sort of direction, but a four-way match had never been done before at WrestleMania. So at the time, it was very new. Here comes Shane McMahon coming in to interfere in the match. And you notice how the arena here is a Raw arena because they don't have No Way Out. They don't have the No Way Out arena here. So they, again, playing out exactly like how it did on the episodes of Raw that were going, and the pay-per-views going on at the time. I have mixed feelings about WrestleMania 2000's main event. I'll start getting into here because we have a bit of time. The storyline was memorable despite being very convoluted, very complex, involving so many moving pieces. The four wrestlers plus every McMahon, the intersecting storylines, all four men's history with each other, not just from Survivor Series, but really from years past. In a lot of ways, it is one of the best examples of how WWF actually did follow continuity way back in the day in the year 2000, but also one of the best examples of how they love to overcomplicate things and still do. And it always left me with sort of a mixed bag of emotions even back then. At the time, I remember feeling very perplexed by the four-way match at WrestleMania because really it seemed like it had too many people involved. And looking back on it now, my feelings on that have only strengthened. I know my Let's Plays, go into a lot of research about what goes on. But honestly, to talk about like every twist and turn and every plot point leading into the McMahon and every corner storyline, that'd be a whole episode in itself. So I'll just give like the greatest hits version. Shane, he aligns himself with Big Show, as you see in this match. Even though in this match I'll win, The Rock loses, and Shane's his reasoning for it is that he thinks the Big Show is the future and that he's gonna regain power in the WWF from his sister and Triple H. The Rock gets back into the main event after Vince McMahon returns, not seen since his match with Triple H, helping The Rock to defeat the Big Show on an episode of Raw, making the WrestleMania match a triple threat. Then Linda McMahon shows up, and this is not all like on one night. This is over the course of several weeks. Linda McMahon shows up saying that eventually someone else should get a chance to main event at WrestleMania who never had the opportunity, and introduces Mick Foley. And that's basically how we get the short, the Cliff Notes version. That's how we get to the main event of WrestleMania 2000 after Backlash. I have a theory here. I have a theory that I've talked about before on my Twitch channel and in other YouTube episodes, that WrestleMania 2000 was the beginning of an era, indeed, but also the end of one. In my own belief, the Attitude Era ended at WrestleMania 2000. I know people still consider the years 2000, 2001 part of the Attitude Era, but I think the Attitude Era ended in the year 2000 at WrestleMania 2000, and that's when the McMahon family era began and is still going on to this day. The storyline going into WrestleMania 2000 was so massive, so complex. It's admirable in a lot of ways, but it also set the precedent for a lot of tropes that WWE still relies on to this day. Storytelling tropes, the main one being the fact that the most important characters in the WWE universe are the McMahons. No wrestler, whether it's Stone Cold, The Rock, Mankind, John Cena, anyone, Roman Reigns, over the years, will ever be as important than the McMahons. The McMahon in every corner wasn't just like a side gimmick to add to the match. It was the focal point. Because the way it ends, the McMahons, along with Triple H, screwing The Rock, we all know the finish now, right? Sure, The Rock gets pissed, he rock bottoms everyone, and walks away with his music playing, but not the WWF Championship. And the crowd is like, go back and watch it. The crowd is sort of like half cheering at that point because they love The Rock, but all the wind is like sucked out of the moment since he lost. And this is something that would continue over and over again. It would continue as The Rock tries to chase after the title. Undertaker's return, Stone Cold's return, the rise of Benoit, Guerrero, Angle, Jericho, Cena, Orton. Think about every major angle you've seen in the past 19 years and ask yourself which McMahon was involved, including Triple H. It continues to this very day. even right now, what's going on? At the end of this past year, Vince McMahon came out to address the slump that Raw has been experiencing, and that they were going to change things up. By how? By having the McMahons on the show more. They never left. They never left the show. Stephanie, Triple H, and Shane have been in matches. Real quick, this is another example of the game sort of reliving not only what was happening, but a lot of this dialogue is taken from what The Rock would say in his promos. And it's actually really funny to go through this path, and we'll be going through some of these matches in later paths as other wrestlers, and it's going to be really funny to see other wrestlers sort of speak like how The Rock is speaking. I think that's just like kind of funny. And a lot of people point that out in other championship paths where I'm playing as someone and they're talking like someone else, because there's been other championship paths where I've been playing as someone like, who else says candy ass? Like, that's The Rock's thing, right? He's the only one that says candy ass. So when you see that coming up in the dialogue in No Mercy, you are most likely supposed to be playing as The Rock in that storyline. That's kind of neat. Nice little attention to detail. Again, that you don't find in a lot of the other championship paths, but you find more of it in the main WWF Championship path. So yeah, going back to my McMahon theory, they never left. Stephanie, Triple H, Shane, they've been in matches and segments, and even like the past 3 Manias and before that. Even right now, what's going on as I record this, the hottest act in the company, Becky Lynch, has to deal with Vince McMahon removing her from the main event of Mania. And this is really this is not like a statement on like the business practices of the McMahons. This is something on the characters, like focusing on the characters who they're supposed to be playing. Instead of them just supposed to being ringside, somehow they always end up taking the focal point. They always end up being the center of attention. They're given the spotlight more than the other wrestlers. Speaking of the Becky Lynch feud, I wouldn't be surprised history repeats itself, that in order for that to be the actual main event, like the last match of the show main event, a McMahon or two would have to be involved. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a McMahon in every corner revival with what's going on right now with Becky Lynch and Charlotte and Ronda Rousey. Throwing in Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, and Triple H. Shane is probably going to be doing something with The Miz at WrestleMania as well. So again, nothing's changed. They're still around. They're still doing the same stuff. To date though, that has only been the only Fatal 4-Way main event at WrestleMania. I always thought we were going to head to a Fatal 4-Way a few years back when Seth Rollins was WWE champion. I thought the story was going to be Rollins, Reigns, Ambrose, and Lesnar in a Fatal 4-Way, but then Rollins got injured, and I like to believe plans changed because of that. But I thought we were going to get another Fatal 4-Way then, but we still never got one to this day. So it is still unique in that sense. This was also the middle of The Rock's WrestleMania main event trilogy. The year previous to this, he would main event against Austin, and the year after this, he would main against Austin again. It would have been The Rock's only Mania main event appearances, and again, when I say main event, I mean last match main event, if not for his return in 2012-2013, where he back-to-back main evented against John Cena, once in a lifetime. They did it twice. His WrestleMania 28 win against The Rock is his not against The Rock, his WrestleMania 28 win against Cena is his only main event win, and he's lost the championship at WrestleMania 3 times. So again, fun facts there for The Rock. I always thought The Rock should have won the Fatal 4-Way at WrestleMania, and honestly, I thought it should have just been The Rock and Mick Foley as the main event. I should do a fantasy booking episode one day like how I did with WrestleMania 15. It always felt unnecessary how everyone got into the main event. Big Show because he was the actual winner. Foley because, he never won a WrestleMania event, even though he lost 2 straight WWF Championship matches fair and square. And considering their history, I think The Rock and Mankind could have told a great story, and I would have had Mankind win that Hell in a Cell match. Why bring him back Why do that street fight, have him lose the street fight, have him lose the Hell in a Cell, both his signature matches, and then just to bring him back again, and then to have him lose again. You know what I mean? It was just weird. I would have had him win the Hell in a Cell, and then him and The Rock main event WrestleMania. But, hindsight's 2020, right? At one point, Chris Jericho was actually slotted to be in the 4-way before they decided on including Mick Foley. Jericho has talked about this in the past on his podcast. There are even some early promotional pictures of WrestleMania 2000 where Jericho is in the pick instead of Big Show. Oh, no. He's in the pick with Big Show, The Rock, and Triple H instead of Mick Foley. But later on, they changed it to Foley. If you go on the WWE Network, the thumbnail that they use for WrestleMania 2000 has this picture in it of Jericho, Triple H, Big Show, and The Rock. Don't know how they would have factored Jericho into it, who instead ended up being a triple threat match at Mania with Kurt Angle and Benoit for the European and Intercontinental Championship. But the reason that Linda McMahon gave about wanting Foley in a main event was actually true. Bruce Pritchard has talked about this on his Something to Wrestle podcast. They really did want to have Mankind, Mick Foley in a main event match at WrestleMania. So that, as bizarre as it kind of was to have just Linda McMahon be involved, it also was a way to actually give Mick Foley a well-deserved main event spot at WrestleMania for everything he did for the company up until that point. It was expected that would be the end of his in-ring career, but as we all know, that wouldn't be the case. But that's for another episode. So after WrestleMania 2000, the Fatal 4-Way, Triple H wins thanks to the interference of Vince McMahon turning on The Rock, even though he was in The Rock's corner. Shades of when The Rock joined Vince McMahon years ago at Survivor Series, and now Vince McMahon is turning on him, and that would allow Triple H to retain the title. The Rock gets mad, Rock bottoms everyone, walks out, while Vince, Stephanie, Triple H, I think he even gave a rock bottom to Stephanie McMahon, but he's not the champion. That would lead us into Backlash, the next pay-per-view, where The Rock would face Triple H once again, singles match for the WWF Championship with Shane McMahon as the special guest referee and Vince and Stephanie now in Triple H's corner. Even though The Rock lost the main event at WrestleMania, he just gets another shot at the championship, and we'll see later on how that actually comes about, how it's represented in the game. But what he had to do was win a handicap match against Buchanan and Bossman in a cage match, and that's how he would go on to Backlash to face once again for the WWF Championship. The Rock wins the title here. He wins at Backlash in how I would have done it. Talking about this 19 years later, but he wins thanks to Stone Cold Steve Austin making his return. Austin was previously announced to be in The Rock's corner by Linda McMahon, saying that she felt The Rock was going to be outnumbered, and Austin appeared on the SmackDown before the pay-per-view, dropping a crane onto DX's tour bus. WWE loved to do that kind of stuff with Austin back then, always him crashing things with his truck or crashing people's cars or dropping things onto the tour bus. If you go back and you watch it, it's actually kind of funny because he drops this crane on the tour bus, but the tour bus explodes. It implodes from the inside. And I'm like, how did it explode like that? I don't know. It's fun to watch. It's wrestling, WWE wrestling. I recommend the Backlash match over the WrestleMania main event, even though there's a lot of McMahon shenanigans going on and Stone Cold's name being chanted by the crowd throughout the match because they knew he was coming. They knew he was showing up. Triple H and The Rock, they know how to put on intense, high-energy matches, and this is another solid entry for them. We'll see quite a bit Triple H and The Rock throughout 2000. Again, Austin's technically still injured. Even when he comes in, he doesn't hit anyone with stunners. He hits everyone with a steel chair, and then he leaves. So he can't really do much in the way of physical activity. So The Rock and Triple H are pretty much going to carry their feud throughout the rest of 2000. But based on their history, based on their feud they've had in the past over the Intercontinental Championship, it's actually really good. And I really enjoy looking back on this time of rivalry between The Rock and Triple H, because I felt like they always put on very entertaining matches. Immediately after this, which I always thought was a weird scheduling thing, like a week later, they were in the UK doing another pay-per-view. It was called Insurrection UK, and it's kind of reminiscent of how they do sort of the WWE live events overseas now that they tape on the WWE network, or not tape on the, that's me dating myself. They tape it, they put it on VHS for everyone to buy. That they show on the WWE network. It's sort of like that. That's how Insurrection 2000 feels for me, because it feels like a glorified house show. The way the main event goes down, it's The Rock in a handicap match against Shane McMahon and Triple H. Everyone's there. Vince is there. Stephanie's there. They try to do a whole thing with, the Briscoes coming in after a referee bump, trying to do a fast count on The Rock. That doesn't work. McMahon tries to do a fast count. That doesn't work. All these shenanigans, The Rock still retains. If you ever gone to a WWE live event, they do these kinds of matches where the good guy always prevails, because the bad guys just can't seem to get their act together. So it's kind of a fun match in that sense. The UK crowd was really into it, but you could tell they were just maybe doing a holding pattern up until the actual next pay-per-view, which would be Judgment Day. Judgment Day in May of 2000. Triple H and The Rock meeting in a Iron Man match for the WWF Championship with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. Highly recommend this Iron Man match. It's not my favorite Iron Man match of all time, but it's probably, third or fourth, right behind. I would say fourth maybe. My favorite Iron Man match is Lesnar and Kurt Angle on an episode of SmackDown, of all places. They just have this amazing Iron Man match. My second favorite will probably have to be Sasha and Bayley, their 30-minute Iron Man match at NXT TakeOver. And then my third favorite, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. My fourth favorite would probably be this one, The Rock and Triple H. Again, like I said, despite Austin and The Rock main eventing WrestleMania 3 out of these 4 years, The Rock and Triple H had a great feud throughout the years, going all the way back to their feuds from the Nation DX era and Clash over the Intercontinental Championship. First Iron Man match since WrestleMania 12, which happened 4 years ago, between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Again, another one of my favorites. So it's interesting that HBK is a special referee for this match. And this match has one of the most memorable moments for me, which is the return of The Undertaker, where he would eventually be known as the American Badass. Here, he was just Badass Taker showing up on a bike, a motorcycle and a dope trench coat. It's not like when he came out, they were like, it's the American Badass Undertaker. It was like, oh, it's the Undertaker, and he looks different. And, it's such a great moment. And a really underrated, I think, Iron Man match, because the pacing is really solid in this match. The points end up being 6-5 compared to the previous one we would see with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, which ended up only being 1-0 thanks to a 5-minute overtime. Thank you, Gorilla Monsoon, for that. I'll never get over that. But, there's a lot of sort of shenanigans involved. Triple H does this brilliant thing where he DQs himself. He hits The Rock with a chair, and Michaels is like, well, I gotta DQ you. But then Triple H pins him right after that, and he gets a victory. So it's a lot of little things like that they do to add the points onto the match. Originally, Triple H tells the McMahon family to stay in the back. But of course, when The Rock is starting to catch up on points and look like he's gonna win the thing, the McMahons come out. And then that's when they played the video package that was playing at the time that I didn't know it was The Undertaker. I guess maybe other people expected it at the time, but you know, I just thought it was a promo video for Judgment Day. These three girls in white, very creepy, and saying, you know, the Judgment Day for him is coming. I thought it might have been Austin again or something like that, even though we had already seen Austin. But he comes in right at the end as the timer's going down. Go back, if you haven't seen this in a long time, not only watch the match, but go back and watch this moment, because it's crazy how he comes back and how they do the timing with it to really end the match, but also the crowd's energy. They go crazy. It's kind of a complicated finish too, because Undertaker has to come down on the bike. He has to beat up all the McMahons and DX, throw all these choke slams. Shawn Michaels gets in the ring, sees the Undertaker choke slamming Triple H. He's trying to stop him. Undertaker gives him a tombstone pile driver. Shawn Michaels calls for the bell right as the counter's reaching 0. So you're thinking, oh, it's tied 5-5. The Rock is going to retain. But Shawn Michaels declares that because of interference, that's a DQ onto The Rock. Triple H ends up winning the WWF Championship. Crazy finish. And, you know, if not for all the involvement of the McMahons for every single Rock match leading up to this, and every single Rock match leading up, you know, coming after this, I think that if we didn't have all that McMahon interference, it would make you surprised that the McMahons won because of this. But because that's my only knock on it, was that there was so much McMahon interference. But I think the thing that made it different was that the Undertaker showed up and we hadn't seen him because of injury for several months. So that was really cool, and I think that's what makes it different and unique from all the other McMahon interferences that we've been experiencing so far. Very cool moment. I just love the crowd reaction. I loved Undertaker's look at the time. Whether you love or hate the American Badass gimmick, we'll definitely talk about that in a future Undertaker WWF Championship Let's Play. That leads us into King of the Ring, June 2000. The Rock and the Brothers of Destruction, the now returned Undertaker and Kane, defeating the McMahon-Helmsley faction in a 6-man tag team match. Now, this was a 16 tag match that had a very unique stipulation. Whoever scored the pinfall would become the WWF champion. Usually when a stipulation like that happens, that means the champ is gonna lose for sure. So I don't know why the McMahons put themselves in this situation, but who knows. And even though the Brothers of Destruction, they were teaming up with The Rock, there was a lot of moments in the match where they were kind of turned on each other because they individually wanted to get the pin over the McMahons, as opposed to, you know, like Kane stopped The Rock from winning, Undertaker stopped Kane from winning, because they all wanted to be WWF champion. In the end, The Rock would hit a rock bottom onto Vince McMahon, becoming the 5-time WWE champion. Here we go. Shane again, Rock again with more promos reminiscent of what was going on at the time. There we see Vince McMahon saying how he's gonna be in The Rock's corner, and this is a lot. This is a lot of back and forth. I think the WWF World Championship run probably has the most cutscenes. It's 10 matches total. And it's definitely the longest, not because of the Royal Rumble only, but because of all these cutscenes. And it's really funny how it keeps going back and forth with all the word bubbles and something like that. I think they really spent a lot of time on this WWF Championship path, and then maybe spent too much time on it, that they didn't do this much attention to detail with any of the other paths. But then again, you know, like, it would have been kind of neat, you know, like if every single championship path followed some sort of storyline that went into WrestleMania, just like how the WWF Championship path does. But we don't really get that. We get that kind of with the Intercontinental Championship path with Benoit, Jericho, and Angle, but we don't really get that with the Tag Team Championship path or the Hardcore Championship path. The Light Heavyweight Championship path is kind of non-existent throughout the year anyway. the Women's Championship. We don't really get those in this story mode like we do with the WWF Championship. So again, that's what makes it very unique. And here we have, you know, The Rock and Vince McMahon against Shane and The Big Show, aka Stevie Richards. I don't know why they chose Stevie Richards either. I don't know why Stevie Richards was the choice for a substitute as Shane McMahon. If anything, it would have made more sense if they chose Chris Benoit as a substitute, because at Fully Loaded 2000, The Rock would face Chris Benoit with Shane McMahon in his corner for the WWF Championship match. If you remember, Benoit, along with Guerrero, Malenko, and Saturn, came into the WWF a week after the Royal Rumble, aligning themselves with the McMahon-Helmsley faction. They were known as the Radicals. I've covered the Radicals quite a bit on a few different Let's Plays on my channel, but all you really have to know here is that Benoit comes to the ring with Shane McMahon in his corner, and Mick Foley, who was commissioner at the time, makes the stipulation that the title can still change hands via a DQ. He does that to sort of protect The Rock, but it ends up backfiring because, of course, Shane McMahon attacks the ref, causing The Rock to get DQ'd. But then Foley comes out after Benoit and Shane are almost done leaving with the championship, by the way. Benoit is all of a sudden the WWF champion for a brief moment, says that he didn't see the DQ, the ref didn't see the DQ, and the audience didn't see the DQ, restarting the match. It's essentially a dusty finish, which is usually reserved for the babyfaces winning a championship, only to have the decision reversed back to the heels and put more heat on the heels. But it's done reverse here to put more tension, I think, between Mick Foley and the McMahon's power that be, again, stemming from Mick Foley being part of the WrestleMania 2000 main event. Now he's commissioner, trying to be the antagonist to the McMahon-Helmsley power faction, and to help The Rock have an ally in a way to overcome the odds stacked against him, as they've been stacked against him since, you know, forever. Like every match, the McMahons are there trying to do something to The Rock. People complain about interference nowadays in WWE. It went on all the time. Nothing's changed. It went on all the time back then, and it still goes on all the time now. The match continues. They fight a few more moments. Rock bottom. The Rock retains. Great match, though. Honestly, great match. Again, despite the weird, you know, DQ, dusty finish thing going on, fantastic match between The Rock and Benoit. It is their only singles pay-per-view match ever, so very unique in that case. They would meet a few more times on like Raw and SmackDown, but the only pay-per-view match with Benoit and The Rock, and Benoit's real first high-profile pay-per-view match outside of his Intercontinental matches with like Benoit, with like Jericho and Angle, ever since coming in as a member of the Radicals. So I don't know why they chose Stevie Richards, considering how the rest of the year would play out, because you would see Benoit pop up again after that. But yeah, they went with Richards. I would have chosen Benoit. I would have substituted Benoit since Big Show is not in the game. That would lead us into SummerSlam 2000, and then here we go. We got Linda McMahon coming out, bringing out Mick Foley. We're about to get into our main event at WrestleMania in WWF No Mercy. But SummerSlam 2000, The Rock, Kurt Angle, and Triple H. I covered Kurt Angle's amazing rise in the WWF. It is essentially his rookie year, probably the best rookie year anyone has ever had in the WWF, most notably with, you know, comparing it to maybe someone like Lesnar or even Ronda Rousey these days, but I still think Kurt Angle probably had the best first year. This is a high-profile meeting of the two. We saw Kurt Angle in the beginning of the WWF No Mercy Let's Play. He won the King of the Ring this year, and so he sort of was not guaranteed. They never guaranteed the King of the Ring winner, but he sort of was, I guess guaranteed is the right word. I don't know. You win the King of the Ring, you're going to go on to bigger and better things. But he was also involved in a love triangle with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, and that's really what led into the main event match for SummerSlam. This match is infamous for how it started. Angle gets on the mic, trash talking Triple H. Triple H comes out. They fight before the bell rings. They go to the outside to the Spanish announce table where Triple H is going to give him a pedigree on top of the table. The table breaks early as he's doing the pedigree, and Kurt Angle immediately gets concussed because of it. I'll talk more about like that whole situation because it's really hard to watch these days, and Kurt Angle has talked about it. A lot of other people have talked about it. Triple H, again on the Something to Wrestle podcast, they've discussed it, what went on behind the scenes. But, what you need to know for now is that, Kurt Angle gets concussed in a moment where he really was probably just supposed to lay out for most of the match anyway, because he was going to get pedigree through the table. Like, that was the spot. So The Rock comes out, and The Rock and Triple H fight for a majority of the match. Kurt Angle comes back in. They do a whole thing where Kurt Angle's now fighting The Rock, but because of, again, miscommunication between the Angle, Stephanie McMahon, and Triple H, The Rock is able to get the people's elbow onto Triple H and retain the title. It's a good match. It still holds up, but be warned, if you haven't seen this match, watching the concussion of Kurt Angle is very rough, considering we all know now about, brain damage and concussions in wrestling. The camera stays right on it, and that's what's different, I would think, now than back then, is that maybe the cameraman or even the production staff didn't really know what happened immediately to Kurt Angle, didn't know that the spot went wrong. And when you watch the camera just staying on Kurt Angle's face, like, you can very clearly see his eyes like glaze over. Not, he's seeing stars at that point, and Triple H talking to him, trying to keep him staying down because he is trying to get up. I think that was just his maybe like instinct was to get up because he didn't know probably where he was. Very crazy to see. And even listening to the Bruce Pritchard podcast when they talked about it, they just thought like they would say that he got his bell rung and he would come back to finish the match. He got checked on by the doctors, but would come back out, apparently his own decision to finish the match. But Kurt Angle would go on to later say like he didn't really come to until a few hours later. So he has no recollection, no memory of everything that took place in the match. Crazy stuff. Again, a weird moment, a weird real moment to happen in a match that, despite all that craziness, is still a really good, really entertaining match. And The Rock and Triple H do a great job of recovering from that and still keeping the match entertaining, I should say, because again, they have great chemistry. That leads us into Unforgiven, The Rock, Benoit, Undertaker, and Kane. And again, another Fatal 4-Way. We're watching the Fatal 4-Way right now with The Rock, Cactus Jack, aka Mick Foley, Triple H, and Stevie Richards. Stevie Richards looks so out of place in this championship path. You know what also bugs me about I have nothing against Stevie Richards. I like Stevie Richards. I like them in ECW. I think he's actually a really good wrestler. He's a very funny guy. He loves wrestling games. He loves video games. But what bugs me, this is the right to censor Stevie Richards, and every time you do these WWF Championship paths, you have to listen to the right to censor music each and every time. It gets annoying very fast, very quick. But at Unforgiven, we would see another Fatal 4-Way match reminiscent of WrestleMania 2000. This time, it's The Rock defending his championship against Chris Benoit, The Undertaker, and Kane. Kind of a filler championship defense match, to be honest. Again, sort of like how the previous Benoit match was, just to get us to SummerSlam. I think this was sort of just to get us to No Mercy. The crowd was super into it, though, and the pacing was fast. There's not really a technical match, even though Benoit's in it, and The Rock and Benoit had a great technical match. You have Kane and Undertaker there, so there's a lot of brawling, a lot of spilling out into the outside of the ring. Benoit wins the match very early on. He attacks Taker with the chair, pins him. The ref doesn't see Taker get his foot on the ropes, but same thing. Benoit's music plays. He grabs the championship, starts walking back up the ramp. He's won the match again. In several months, he's won the championship, only to have Mick Foley once again come out the back, stop Benoit from celebrating and restarting the match, saying that Taker's foot was on the ropes. I don't know why they did that. It's kind of unnecessary. Very obvious it was going to be reversed because it was so early in the match. And interesting that both times there was this false finish, start and restarting of a match. It happened with Benoit in these championship matches with The Rock. Very interesting. But the match continues, and eventually The Rock prevails over Benoit, giving him a rock bottom. Undertaker and Kane fighting outside of the ring, so they can't go in to stop it. There we go. Get Stevie Richards out of here. Every time I do this WWF Championship path, I always try to eliminate Stevie Richards first. It's just a thing. That would lead us to No Mercy, where we would see Kurt Angle go one-on-one with The Rock. The pay-per-view for which this game is named, WWF No Mercy, is the culmination of two very important storylines that we've been discussing this whole episode and that lasted all year in the year 2000, and that is the mystery of who ran over Stone Cold and the rise of The Rock as the People's Champion, the true People's Champion, the babyface champion, in the absence of Stone Cold and his feuds with the McMahon-Helmsley regime. A few weeks prior to this, it was revealed that Rikishi was the one who did it for The Rock without The Rock's knowledge. He's the one who ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin. I did a WWF No Mercy Intercontinental Let's Play for Rikishi where I talked about the whole Rikishi running over Austin storyline and the fallout of that, so go check that out. I really like that episode a lot. I think it's one of my favorite WWF No Mercy Let's Play episodes, talking about Rikishi and what could have been. But his plan falls apart all in one night. Austin returns to almost run him over in a no-holds-barred match they have, and The Rock loses his championship to Kurt Angle. There we go, pinning Mick Foley. I always try to leave Mick Foley as last as well, because again, I always felt like it should have been The Rock and Mick Foley at WrestleMania in a singles match. But even in that four-way match, I always thought it was really weird that Mick Foley got eliminated right after the Big Show. You know, he lasted a lot longer than the Big Show, but it was always really weird to see Mick Foley get eliminated and then just have it be The Rock and Triple H at the end. But here we go, Vince McMahon turning on The Rock, taking the championship belt away from him. Very funny stuff. That's not how it went down, but, you know, again, sort of similar to how it went down. There will be a path that we'll take where we'll have to lose that match, which will be fun. But yeah, so Rikishi's plan falls apart in one night. The Kurt Angle Rock match is it's a no DQ match announced at the start of the match, so the fix is in. Stephanie McMahon accompanying Kurt Angle. There's still a weird love story going on there between Stephanie McMahon, Kurt Angle, and Triple H, who also interferes during the match. No DQ. He shows up. He interferes. So it looks like The Rock is going to lose there because of the Triple H interference, but actually he survives. He kicks out, and the match continues, but Rikishi shows up doing his best Shinya Hashimoto head bandage impression, and he tries to help The Rock, but he only makes the matters worse, accidentally super kicking The Rock and getting Angle slammed for his troubles. Angle pins The Rock and becomes the new WWF champion. It's true. What a rookie year for Kurt Angle. I can't wait to talk about that in a future episode. The match between The Rock and Angle was solid, although, again, a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of McMahon-Helmsley interference. It's crazy to see Angle accomplish so much in that first year, looking back on it and seeing how many high-profile matches he got in 2000 and then becoming WWF champion. But clearly, you can still see him figuring it out, not really becoming the Kurt Angle we would all really know and love until a couple of years later, where he's like the best wrestler in the company. Here, he's very much following the lead of The Rock, of Triple H, Undertaker, but still holding his own with them. And It makes so much sense that he was given the title at this point. Instant natural to the WWE coming from his Olympic background. But that would lead us, now that we got Rikishi, he got beat up by Stone Cold early in the night. He causes The Rock to lose the WWF Championship. This would lead to Survivor Series. Again, he did it for The Rock, but The Rock didn't approve. He didn't want Rikishi to run over Stone Cold. So now they're going to have a match at Survivor Series 2000. I think out of all the matches we've talked about, going from Survivor Series 99 to Survivor Series 2000, this might be my favorite match of that time. Very underrated match. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about. Everyone remembers Rikishi running over Stone Cold and all those shenanigans, and then maybe even I think the Hell in a Cell match that would come a few months later, Rikishi getting thrown off. People talk about those moments a lot for this whole storyline, but I think the actual match between The Rock and Rikishi is such a great match. It is so well timed. There's a lot of energy and excitement in it. The Rock comes running out to fight Rikishi. When was the last time you saw that? When was the last time, in these rivalries that we get these days, where people are supposed to really hate each other, where there's supposed to be a lot of feud between the two, and especially if it's like a blood feud, it's a family feud, like how it was with The Rock and Rikishi. When was the last time you saw someone just running out and just coming right out the gate with all this intensity and fire like how The Rock does in this match? This wasn't the main event. This was like in the middle of the card. This was like the first time The Rock wasn't in a main event since WrestleMania 2000, and it would be the last time he wasn't in a main event until the next WrestleMania. So an anomaly in that sense for The Rock, being in the middle of the card in a timeline where he was always right at the end of the pay-per-view. But it's one of the best matches of that night, I think. Probably the best match, at least my favorite match of the night. Every time I look back and I watch this match, I just love it. Rikishi is awesome in this match. And again, it's something I talked about in the Let's Play with Rikishi. He could have been right up there, fighting for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship against The Rock, against Stone Cold, against Triple H, against all of them, because Rikishi was a very underrated wrestler as well. I thought The Rock wins the match. Rikishi gets his heat back at the end of the match, though, attacking The Rock, giving him 2 bonsai drops. Shades of Yokozuna, still beating people up after the match and giving them a bonsai drop. Here we go. We get the, again, the whole championship path is pretty much going to the WrestleMania match, but we get the Rock winning his #1 contendership for Backlash here against Shane McMahon. Realistically, it was a handicap match against Buchanan and Bossman in a steel cage, but you can't do handicap matches in a steel cage in WWF No Mercy, so they give us a regular match with Shane McMahon. And that's it. That's November. That's November to November Survivor Series. This is what I talked about in the beginning of the episode with Triple H and The Rock closing it out on Backlash for this WWF Championship half. What you're going to see here is me speed through a Iron Man match, because again, their match at Backlash was just a one-on-one with Shane as a special guest referee. It would be their Judgment Day meeting a few months later that would be the Iron Man match, where The Undertaker would come in. Iron Man matches they're fun to do in WWF No Mercy, I think, when you're playing against a human opponent, when you're playing against a computer opponent, and you can beat the computer very easily. They become kind of tiresome and tedious because you have to wait the time out. I guess maybe I could have, gave myself a handicap in this match and just let Triple H beat me a little bit and then try to make a comeback. I guess maybe I'll do that for the next time I do a Iron Man match. But here you're just gonna see me beat Triple H several times. So I'm gonna speed through it, much like how I sped through the Royal Rumble, and then even speed through. Let's do a little bonus round action for everything that happened after Survivor Series, because The Rock, he would defeat the Rikishi at Rebellion 2000. He would be in another Fatal 4-Way match, 3 Fatal 4-Way matches in the year of 2000. for the WWF Championship. This time, Kurt Angle defending the title against Rikishi, The Rock, and Stone Cold. That's another fun match. Highly recommend watching that match. Kurt Angle retains. And then at Armageddon, we would get the infamous 6-person Hell in a Cell. The Rock, Stone Cold, Triple H, Undertaker, Rikishi, and Kurt Angle for the WWF Championship. Kurt Angle retains. The Royal Rumble 2000, Stone Cold would win the Royal Rumble last, eliminating Kane, who set the record. Up until that point, as the most eliminations, it wouldn't be broken until Roman Reigns, right? Roman Reigns has the record now. Or did Braun Strowman get the record yet? He'll get the record soon enough. And then No Way Out is when The Rock and Kurt Angle would meet once again, and The Rock would regain the WWF Championship, leading us to probably one of the best matches that The Rock and Stone Cold ever had, main eventing WrestleMania 17, where Stone Cold would defeat The Rock and get the WWF Championship. So after all of that, after Stone Cold's absence, seeing the rise of The Rock, we see him losing to his true rival in WWF, and that is Stone Cold Steve Austin. I had a lot of fun looking back on this time period. I'm excited to look at all the other key players in the WWF Championship mode for the rest of the WWF Let's Play series for the WWF Championship. So let me know what you think. Let me know what your memories were of this moment in time. Very fun time, as complicated and as convoluted as it got with the McMahons and everything. Still a very fun time in WWE history. I am Be Better Gamer. Thank you so much for watching this video. You can check out some of my other WWF No Mercy videos here, as well as my WWF No Mercy calls. Make sure you follow me on social media and Twitch at Be Better Gamer. Until next time, you know what to do. Keep watching all the wrestling. Thanks again.